This is the valve spring off a 2006 Ford Mustang V6 4.0 liter. I've never done the job before, so I thought I'd make a video. It's not an easy job. It's mainly due to access. Access is just very limited when doing it on the car. Nothing removed except for the valve cover gasket. It's just take your time. It took me like 4.5 hours to do the job. I can do it faster now. I know what to do, but still, it's takes a little while to do. You just have to be patient. And I used, which you'll see in a video later, about what I used to keep the valve spring compressed. I think that is definitely the way to go. Figuring out some way to do that, just because it's so hard to get the keepers in there. But hopefully this video will help other people out that decide to do this job. Okay, so obvious parts for the job. Get some springs. And it looks like it's probably going to be, as hard as this is, replaced as needed. So obviously the spring, this tool here works really well. Definitely the tool to use. They have different sizes for this one, and obviously you can put it at different points depending on what your axis is and what works out better. And then obviously we need this compression kit. Mainly we just need it so we can put air into the cylinder to drive that valve up, and so it stays full up, because you'll definitely need that when you go to reinstall it. Alright, kind of hopefully get a good shot of the spring. You can definitely see where it's broken at. I can really see it pretty good now. Hopefully the camcorder is picking this up. Hopefully compare it to a good one. Hopefully see there's nothing wrong with that one. A good position for the tool is definitely, and using it, is the hardest part about this job. And it does, I'll show it to you and pull the tool out, but getting access to it is the hardest part. You can kind of see you got the two holes. You can put that pivot pin two different locations. You can actually put the bottom piece there that compresses the spring. You can flip it that way or the other way. I'm sure it just depends on your access. Now for me, I definitely want to use a magnet to get these little keepers out so they don't fall in, because they could definitely fall all the way into the motor right through that little access hole. I can see that now. I need to stuff my rag in there. I missed that hole right there. I gotta put that up. Okay, here we go. Alright, I want to show you how these keepers work. You'll see the grooves there on the top of that valve stem. That's how the keepers actually grab hold of it. They have the same kind of grooves on the keepers, so that's what you got to make sure that they grab onto when you put them back on. Make sure they line up with the grooves, and they'll snap into place. Obviously you can tell if they're not. They won't wrap completely around the valve stem. What I've seen a good trick on YouTube is to get some heavy grease, clean them up, heavy grease, and that'll help it stick to the top of that valve stem while you reassemble everything. Okay. This is for number 4 cylinder, of course, the one closest to the sprocket for the camshaft. So be sure and you put plenty of towels, rags, whatever, so this stuff doesn't fall down inside the motor. Getting ready to compress the spring. Now this is where, if I do this again on another valve cylinder, two things is, one, you kind of see that cam is rotated over. I would definitely rotate that around to where it's pointing exactly the opposite way to give yourself a little bit more room, or at least you can see it better, and a little bit better access. Not a lot, but at least some. And I do have air on this right now, but another thing that I would do next time is to of course move the cam over, but at the same time get that cylinder as high as possible, just in case something happens, it won't drop all the way in. Okay, hard part number 1 is actually compressing it enough to get the keepers in there. Hopefully you can see the grooves here on this video. If I can zoom in anymore. Nope, that's it. I definitely don't suggest this, but I didn't have a second hand, so I'm using board. Actually working out pretty well. Got a nice secure. It's not moving anywhere. Now because it's a hard access, it's grease on the glove, grease on the keeper, one at a time. See how it goes. Alright, pretty difficult to get video of this, and hopefully this is clear enough you can see it, but the keepers are on now, and especially having doing it this way while having this brace, I could see two people doing it, but it's such a pain to get the keepers down in there. You can rig up something where it holds in place like this. Wow, way easier for sure. And the grease on the keepers, grease on the gloves, that worked out really well. I want to go and show this too. Couldn't really see very well in other videos I looked at on YouTube about how the rocker arm works on the overhead cam. And I don't think it does. It just sits in there. Now this part, put it down. This part will ride on the valve and spring obviously, and this part rides on the other side. It just sits down on both of them, and then as the cam comes along, it pushes down the whole thing. Alright, now it's time to put the rocker arm on, and I had to bump the car a little bit. I wanted to get that cam out of the way so it's actually not pushing down on the spring at all at this point. So it should make the rocker arm a little bit easier to install. Hope so. Okay, all finished with the install. And get that light on there again. There we go. Again, there's so much stuff in the way it's hard to see, but well, looking a whole lot better. Had to compress the spring just a little bit once that cam was moved out of the way. I had to press it too much, but a little bit. I was able to get the rocker arm on. Went ahead and cleaned up all the area for the valve cover, and going back with reassembly. One extra bracket you have to take off on the fuel line. You'll see it coming here. Goes down to this bracket. And this bracket's got one bolt, and it's way down there in the bottom. Make sure you take that bracket off. And this will allow you enough room to pull this whole line up high enough in order to get the valve cover off. Without it, there's no way. It's too far down. And you have to move this around quite high in order to get this across this part. Okay, I was going to show this part. I believe this is what happened over time, is that the spring has been broken for quite a while, and then over time these pieces have screwed into each other to make it shorter. Bought the car about a year ago, and it's always been not hard to start, but it's like it took a little longer than normal. It didn't kick over right away, like a couple extra turns. And now that I've replaced the spring, it starts up right away. And so I'm thinking, like over time, if they're broke, they threaded into each other, and the spring slowly became shorter and shorter. And so the valve was seating, but not seating very well. Because I also, anytime the fan for the radiator comes on, or for the compressor kicks on, the engine would slow down on idle quite a bit. It's like it was a heavy load. But now that I replaced the spring and the valve seating real well, it does it, but not near as much. So, right after I was finished, I went back and did some more research so I can get the proper terminology. So actually it's not a rocker arm, they call it a cam follower. And actually what the cam follower pivots on are those lash adjusters, the 3s. Basically like a hydraulic lifter. And then obviously the other side pushes down on the valve and spring. So the pivot point is there on the lash adjuster.